You see, nonfiction is mid, but fantasy is one of the greatest things mankind has ever created. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Rulerverse. I'm Renee Rule, and this is an extremely biased book genre tier list. There isn't actually a way to rank book genres fairly because they can be interpreted in many different ways, and people like different ones depending on their taste. However, for the sake of experimentation and perhaps chaos, I have decided to make a tier list of them anyway. This will be based solely on my personal opinion of these genres, and as you can see, the tiers are not even separated in traditional D2S format. We have it ranging from me thinking it's boring to it being a blessing on mankind, as many stories can be. This should be fun. Let's get into it. Alright, here is the list. We are going to go through each of the major genres one by one. Not every single book genre is listed in here. We don't really have time to rank every single genre and subgenre, so we've just got the main ones. First up, we have essay. So honestly, I don't know too much about the essay genre except for, the essays that we were forced to write at school, although I know that's a slightly different thing. When it refers to essay here, it refers to educational. And honestly, I don't have too much to say about that, so I'm gonna go with no opinion. Next, we have action/adventure. So as a sort of thriller, action, adventure, fantasy, whatever writer, I really like these genres a lot. I think they can create great stories. And I never get tired of it, because who doesn't love a good adventure with a protagonist and them learning how to fight? Alright, now we got memoir. Is it bad that I want to put this into the boring category? Yep, I'm doing it. Boring. Who wants to read a book about somebody's life? I mean, I'm sure a lot of people do, I just don't, not normally. Horror, here we go. So horror, I have some mixed feelings on, mostly because it gave me nightmares as a kid, and honestly, a lot of horror stuff still gives me nightmares now. And as we know from the horror movie genre, it's kind of been ruined by jump scares and cheap tricks and whatever. So you know what? I think I'm gonna add a new tier here. Give me a moment. Yeah, and we're gonna move it, we might keep it right here. We might move it below no opinion. Gonna change the color here. Yeah, I like that. And we're gonna put bad impression, okay? I have a bad impression of this genre, so we're gonna put it right there. All right, and I have moved the no opinion down to the bottom because that just looks better color-wise. Let's keep going. True crime. All I can think about when I think true crime is all those true crime podcasts that are like flooding the market right now. Like, it really isn't good, and they always start with, oh, but she didn't know what was going to happen next. But first we need to go into this 20-minute backstory of the person before we get to the actual crime. Trust me, this is important and we're not just filling in runtime. Yeah, who knows, maybe the true crime genre is a little different with books, but I'm feeling mid. I'm feeling just mid. Not great. Next we have mystery. So mystery can be super fun. Anybody who grew up with Scooby-Doo knows that, of course. It can also be not so great and predictable. I've read fantasy stories like that, often fantasy YA that has an element of mystery is very predictable. But my overall impression, I can't put mid for mystery. Mystery can be really thrilling and fun, so I put great stories. Then we have cookbook. I put this in here because it's a genre, but I feel like a lot of the people watching don't care about cookbooks. I don't know, they can be helpful, but I'm just gonna put this down here. Okay, yeah, that looks good there. Philosophy. Now, my impression of philosophy is that it can be helpful, but it's also very confusing and contradictory. Oftentimes my friends who were philosophy majors in college would be like, yeah, this is kind of a bogus major. I don't really know what's going on. So I'm gonna put this in bad impression along with horror. Then we have narrative. So when you think the genre narrative, think personal narrative, the types of essays about yourself that you would write in high school and sometimes college. I don't know if narrative actually happens in college, but anyway, you get the idea. It's something written about somebody, usually in first-person perspective, and it differs from a memoir in the fact that a memoir is someone's entire life, whereas a narrative could be a specific period of time. Honestly, I don't really care about this one that much, so I'm gonna put it in no opinion. I've noticed that no opinion seems to have a white color scheme going on. That is indeed very interesting. Children's literature, kidlit. I put kidlit all into one kind of thing here. And honestly, I've got a great impression of it. Kids' stories are awesome. And the only reason I'm not putting it in the Blessing on Mankind tier is because I want that section to be extra biased, okay? Only my favorite of all the favorites will be up there. But children's literature, I think we need it. You know, we all grew up with Green Eggs and Ham, The Giving Tree, which is kind of scary, but it's got some real themes in there. Yeah, I gotta rank Kids Lit high. And now we get to fantasy. Yeah, you already know. Anyone who's been watching this channel, you already know. You already know I was gonna put it up there. I write fantasy, well, it's kind of fantasy combined with sci-fi, but I write it, I love it, I can't get enough of it, I'm constantly reading stories about it. I think it is one of the best genres. It's a fantastic way to, you know, escape from our bleak reality, and that's something that I personally really need, so. Next up is self-help. Yeah, you'll probably know where I'm gonna put this one. I think self-help can be really great for a lot of people, and I'm sure some self-help books have pulled people out of slumps. But I've also seen a lot of cases of people publishing self-help books that are just kind of their own experience, and a lot of them are doing it to make a quick buck. Anyway, again, I'm sure it can be great, but bad impression. I haven't really read a self-help book that I didn't think was kind of cringe. I'm sure there's plenty. In fact, I think my mom has some in her room somewhere, and I know she likes them. But yeah, me, never really been helpful for me. Next, we have travel. I don't know, I don't care that much. For people who read travel books, cool, but I kind of just, I don't know, like I just go to the place or I just read an article about it online. And yeah, that's it for that one. Fairy tale. Y'all already know. I'm gonna put it up here. I'm not gonna put it in the Blessing on Mankind, that's fantasy, but fairy tales feel like are dang close. I'm gonna put them way up here next to action and adventure. But in a way, fairy tales are the things that birthed fantasy, you know? They have a lot of great messages. And even though people don't write fairy tales as much now, they still affect our storytelling even today. So yeah, respect. Sci-fi, y'all know it. Y'all know it. I hinted at it earlier, it's going up with fantasy. Science fiction is amazing. In fact, I think I'm gonna put it even above fantasy, and I'll give you my reasoning. Through science fiction, you can actually explain fantasy. Like, magic can be created using technology. In fact, I even do that in my own storytelling a lot. And I love it when other people do it too. A lot of people think science fiction is like Star Trek and just takes place in space or something, but it is so much more than that. It can depict other worlds, types of technology that is beyond our imagining, a simulation. Heck, you could do so much with a freaking simulation. Anyway, you get it. To me, it's one of the most flexible genres, and it's also my #1 favorite. Then we have women's fiction. I don't know, I don't really feel either way about this. It's fiction for women, right? You know what? Actually, we're gonna go ahead and look this up so I've got an exact impression of this because I don't know too much about this genre. All right, let's see. Women's fiction. What does Google say? Women-centered books that focus on women's life experience and are marketed to female readers. Okay, well, obviously I can't rank that low. That is inherently a good thing. All right, we'll put women's fiction up here. Next is poetry. Yeah, this one's going here. Sorry, poetry fans. Now, I might actually be persuaded, no. I might be persuaded to put it right here because when you think about it, poetry in music, they're kind of the same thing, you know what I mean? And music is like one of my favorite things ever. But at the same time though, I always remember in high school struggling to understand poems, and they're like, oh, you should get it, it's figurative for this. Well, why don't you just say it? Why don't you just straight up say the thing rather than skirting around it? I don't know, it always bothered me. Maybe I'm just uncultured or something. And we have magical realism. Yeah, I like anything magical. It's going up here. I don't even need to elaborate too much on that because if you look at my other picks in great stories, obviously, you know, magical or magical realism, whatever, it's all gonna be in there. And then we have biography. To remind you guys of the difference, and I'll probably rank these two together actually, biography and autobiography. A biography is something written by someone else about somebody's life or story or whatever. And if memoirs and boring, I'm gonna put this in boring. Again, I don't usually go out of my way to read books about other people's lives. So that is my, totally biased opinion on that. And then autobiography, again, this is the one written about somebody and the author is the same person that the story is about. Who knows, maybe one day when I become famous or something, I'll write something like this and then my opinion on it will change or whatever. But for now, yeah, they're all going down here. I just don't, I don't care that much. And romance. Ooh, do I have mixed opinions about this one, as I'm sure a lot of you do. Romance can be amazing. In fact, a lot of stories that I read have subplots of romance in them, but it can also be really weird and crazy and toxic, and I've seen the most things go wrong in the romance genre, So, I'll just preface this with, I love this genre. I really do. I think, obviously romance is the center of human experience, but I am really between these. I am between bad impression and great stories. So honestly, I think the only really fair thing to do is to kind of just mid. It can be really great when it's done well, but if it's not done well, it can be very problematic, especially if you are somebody young reading this. You might get the wrong idea of what romance is supposed to be. Anyway, that one was difficult. Let's just move on. YA literature. So, I have clumped young adult into kind of just all one thing. I know there's young adult fantasy, young adult fiction, young adult whatever, but we don't have time to rank all of that. Anyway, YA definitely is going into bad impression, because I feel like YA just in and of itself is known for being kinda cringe, amateurish, not super well written. Again, there are always exceptions to this, but that's what I've seen the general consensus of YA to be, especially young adult fantasy. And we have graphic novel. Yeah, I'm definitely putting this up here. I love comics. They help teach me to write. I think graphic novels can be amazing, and by the way, this includes comics and cartoons as well. In fact, no, this is going up here. I love it. I love artwork. I think art can go such a long way in telling a story, and that's my feeling there. Nonfiction. So, you'd think someone like me would put this into the boring category, but honestly, I've read a few nonfiction books that are actually pretty interesting. It's just I don't find them as interesting or like super duper great like in the great stories tier, so I'm just gonna keep it over here in mid. I think it could definitely be amazing, any of these can, but yeah, nonfiction is staying there. We have creative nonfiction. I'm not exactly sure what the difference is between these two. We're gonna do another little Google session here. So let's see here. Creative nonfiction. What is this? Within the world of creative writing, the term creative nonfiction encompasses texts about factual events that are not solely for scholarly purposes. Oh! Okay, that probably would have been the type of nonfiction that I read, actually. Okay, we're gonna change up this tier list then. Okay, yeah, because that's definitely the one that I read. I remember reading one, like, about a cat when I was a kid. I don't know, I don't remember what else was in it. Just mostly the fact that it was a cat. I don't know, I found it interesting. So, and it's not letting me move these back and forth here. Yeah, we're going to put creative nonfiction up higher, and we'll put nonfiction down into the boring tier because I think it's boring. But I don't know, it might be less boring than these just because it's a bigger umbrella or something. Then we go historical fiction. I actually have a pretty high opinion of this. I once read this book a long time ago called Assassin that like added a fake character who wasn't really there for the Lincoln assassination, but she was kind of in the middle of it, and it was super interesting. So my impression of historical fiction is actually really high. It's going up into great stories. And we have satire, to remind some of y'all who might not remember what that one means. Satire is a work making fun of another work. And honestly, I've seen I've seen pretty good satire. It can be fun, but like, I've mostly seen satire in videos and not so much in books. So I don't really know how to categorize this one. I'm just gonna put it down in no opinion because I don't care that much. Let me know if you care down in the comments. Also, let me know what your rankings would be down there too. I'm sure they'll be totally different, and that makes sense. We have different opinions. Social science. So this is gonna fall underneath the science umbrella, which particularly I don't really have necessarily a good or bad impression of. I just think it's kind of there. I'm sure it can be great for certain people, but to me, books written in this genre don't really do too much for me. So social science and science are both going in mid, and we have history. I never liked history too much in school, but I also do acknowledge that history is important for us to learn. Obviously if we don't learn it, it'll repeat, all that stuff. So, I don't dislike it, but I wouldn't read it, on my own. I'm not super duper fascinated with it. I do use it to create real life parallels in my own work sometimes. That's about it. So I think all three of these will just be in mid. Again, this is totally my opinion. Completely biased. So it is fine if you disagree. And lastly, we have thriller. So thriller for me is quite different than horror, and I believe it is actually superior to horror, and it's definitely going up here. Because for me, I don't know, it might be my ADHD brain or something, but I'm not really that interested in a story unless there's a ton of stakes and a lot of things happening. So having that element of thriller is very important to me. But anyway, that completes our tier list for today. Editor, please put it up on the screen so that everybody can see. As you can tell, my opinions on nonfiction and genres like that are pretty, low, I don't care kind of deal. But with sci-fi, fantasy, those are my favorite things ever. I mean, honestly though, can you blame me? Who wants to read a true story when you can escape into a different world using fantasy? Okay, am I right? But anyway, that was interesting and it was pretty fun. Let me know if you like the tier list, and I'm currently out of ideas for tier lists, as you might have been able to tell, I don't know. So if you have an idea for another tier list, go ahead and comment it down below. With that, I hope I've inspired you, and I'll see you in the next video.